today. Thank you for joining us. And this is something new that Education Advance, which is the parent company of Testhound and several other products that I'll bring up, towards the end, just to share what we do as a company all across educational products. But just a webinar series to get some educators talking about what you're doing and hopefully using it to help others be able to make their life a little bit easier. So today we wanted to start talking about the topic of progress monitoring. Krista, you're going to have a lot of information to share. This is what Florida is going through right now. And Andrew in Texas, even though I don't think it's an official formal thing, I think we're seeing a lot of this with different opportunities to assess students throughout the year besides just the official state assessment that we have typically in the spring. So I think it's a really relevant topic. I think everyone around the country is trying to figure out how to get data on their kids post-COVID and how to figure out then what they do with it. So the agenda will be, of course, that I am going to introduce our fabulous guests, and we're going to discuss that guiding question, which is, what is progress monitoring and how do you use it effectively? And if we have any Q&A, then we'll jump into that. And if not, we'll just keep our discussion going and see where it leads us. So I want to thank our guest speakers. We have Andrew Lawver, who's the coordinator of assessment in Birdville ISD in Texas, and Krista Sharon, who's the coordinator of special programs and assessment in Wakulla County, Florida. And I didn't even introduce myself. So my name is Laura Miller. I've been with Testhound going on 7 years and love getting our product out to districts across the country. And we're also joined on the Testhound side with Carrie Bartholomew, who's a new Testhound account executive who's also working to find out what other needs are in different states and get it out to the masses too to help people. So I'm going to quit talking because no one really wants to hear from me anymore. We want to hear from our guests. And just the guiding question is, what is progress monitoring and how to use it effectively? And if it's okay, Krista, I would like to start with you, and maybe if you can kind of explain first the changes that you're seeing in assessment in Florida, kind of how that transition has been going for you, and then maybe some tips of how you can use it to help other folks too.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So Florida has, one thing about education in general is it's constantly changing, right? It's evolving, it's changing, nothing really stays the same. So in Florida, we've seen, an evolution of the testing process. So back in the 80s, with all the legislation and government focus on how we're doing not only individual states, but as a nation, came to focus on this testing concept. So in Florida, we started with this minimum skills competency test, right? Like back in the 80s, like graduating seniors had to take this minimum skills competency test. And then over time, we saw it evolve to a summative type of test of content mastery, right? And then it expanded from just graduating seniors to all grade levels to accountability for teachers in schools, assigning school grades, that type of stuff. Well, now we're seeing an evolution again from end of year mastery to individual student learning growth. And they're doing that through progress monitoring. So in the past, Florida had the Florida Standards Assessment, and it was a summative end of year test that would gauge students' mastery of the standards that they were supposed to learn in that grade. So starting this year in 22-23, we have new standards and a new assessment. So we moved from the Florida Standards to Florida's BEST. We love acronyms, the BEST, Benchmarks for Excellent Student Thinking. And we take the FAST test, which is Florida Assessment of Student Thinking. And that test is aligned to the BEST standards. And so now we're progress monitoring students 3 times a year. And this is a state computer adaptive assessment that is given within the first 30 days of school. and then it's given in the winter time, and then it's going to be given in May. And so now we can look and track students' growth from beginning to middle to end of the school year. The interesting thing about it is it begins it's full content for that grade level. So at the beginning, we don't expect students to be proficient, right? Because they haven't learned the standards yet. So they're seeing full content from the get-go all the way through. So you are seeing that growth as the teacher provides instruction to the students and as the students master that content. So we are going to have a lot of changes to our accountability system in Florida. But it's going to be interesting now that we've given our first progress monitoring assessment, PM1, we call it. We give PM2 in January. So to see that growth, right, there's going to be a lot of interesting conversations with teachers and with school administrators on student growth, you know, or lack of growth, and asking those guiding questions. I like to tell teachers and school leaders that assessment is not only about student performance and tracking student performance, but it's about tracking teacher performance as well, and our effectiveness as educators. So what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Where do we need to pivot and try something else? And it really, really puts that heartbeat into the data aspect of education, because you're not just looking at data at the very end of the year. It's an evolving, like you're looking at it multiple times a year. It forces you to do that. And as a school district in Wakulla, we always did that. We always had a progress monitoring system, but now, you know, we're adapting that state because we don't want to progress monitor the progress monitoring. So we're learning this new system. So I hope that kind of gave you an introduction of what's going on.
It definitely does. And just to kind of follow up on that, it sounds like something y'all have been doing for a while anyway in your district, but what have been maybe some specific challenges that you've faced up to this point, or what's maybe been kind of hard, and how do you maybe see trying to address that moving forward?
So there's two big issues with the first progress monitoring assessment. The first one is the length of the assessment, because when we thought of progress monitoring, we think about brief assessments. You know, we're talking about 30 to 45 minute assessment. Well, this assessment is taking 90 minutes and sometimes even longer. And I don't think the state really anticipated that as much as you know, they did, but so it's a pretty big assessment, and we know that disrupts instruction. It disrupts the school day. Kids who are not finished, because they're giving kids as much time as they need. So, you know, kids going to lunch, not going to lunch, you know, kids with accommodations, all of that type of stuff has been kind of a logistic nightmare. And teachers like, we're doing this 3 times a year. You know, they're used to only doing that 1 time a year, but here we are doing it 3 times a year. And the level of rigor, especially for our little guys. We were a paper-based assessment system for the last handful of years, few years. And so getting those little guys used to testing on a computer again, they're not used to it. So a lot of it had to do with the computer skills aspect. So we had to make some new plans. We've adopted a new typing program that we've integrated into our wheel, our special wheel, where kids are working on their computer and typing skills. So those things have been kind of interesting that have come up as a result of these issues and challenges.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. And so, Andrew, I'm going to launch into you. Take this from a Texas perspective, and maybe it's from, you know, kind of what Krista did from across time, like how things have changed, or do you see us shifting in this direction, or what have your experiences been? Have you watched trends change here in Texas?
You know, I think most of what we see in education is cyclical. Things come, things go, things come back again. We continue to go through this same cycle over and over again. And we are still very much a summative assessment at the end of the year. Although the state has really tried to give us some other options. This year, we're doing a TTAP, which is a through-year pilot, which mirrors exactly what you're talking about, Krista. They want to see if this is something that is doable for the state of Texas. Now, for our district, we decided to not participate in that, but we are participating in interim assessments, which is taking interim assessments in November and also again in March. And what that's going to do is that's really going to identify target areas that we can take back to our campuses and say, okay, these kids are getting it in this particular area, but what are we not getting here? So that's really been a shift for us here in our campus at our district, is looking at those interim assessments and saying, okay, what do we do with this information? It's great information. What the interims have also done is it's given us a predictive value at the end of those assessments to say this kid is going to predict and get to this particular point. And it's been a real shift for our teachers to navigate onto that predictability. And so we ran a district assessment over the summer just to see what the predictability was, and it was incredibly high. So it brings us back to what are we doing with that data? We have it. How are we going to monitor and what are we going to do with it? And again, with that shift, it's really been, how do we address our teachers? Do we continue with this culture of testing, which is really what we've been in for a long time, is this culture of testing versus a culture of assessment, to say we are going to use this assessment to help build our teaching and learning, to help navigate where our students need to go. So when you start talking about what Florida's doing, I can see us getting in that direction at some point. We have several districts across the state that are participating, and I think TA was our education agency was super excited about the number of districts that wanted to participate in it. So it's really about going back and saying this kid is doing well in this part. I will say that we're going through a redesign of our assessment. We're adding new question types and things like that. Gone are the days of straight multiple choice or multiple guess tests. And so we're going through the same type of issue. We're having to retrain teachers and retrain students on what this looks like. But I think it's going to be good. Ultimately, I think it's going to be great for kids. It's just, how are we going to use that as educators? And when we really look at progress monitoring, I always try to go back and try to give an example to our teachers. We all have these Apple Watches now, or these fitness trackers that are providing us real-time data where we are at. And I think that we have to do the same thing for our kids, is that show them exactly where we're at, show real-time data if we're going to see and achieve the results that we truly want.
That's awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Just because we're sitting here and I mean, I keep thinking more and more, and you're right, testing versus assessment, what are we really doing? But we're creating all these opportunities, even as Krista said, for our youngest ones. I mean, watching what's happening again with you in Florida, our little elementary kiddos are, within the first 30 days, they are jumping in and taking tests, and here we go. And and just like Andrew's pointing out with interim assessments and other types of local assessments districts can give, there's just a lot more opportunity to have to manage and deal with the logistics of testing. And so just because I'm kind of going down this, train, and I am curious, knowing y'all are both Testhound districts, has Testhound helped you manage these extra logistics or extra administrations? And if so, how? Or do you have any suggestions on things that we need to be doing better to help with the direction that we're all going with this progress-based monitoring? So, Krista, I'll start with you if that's okay, and then hop on over to Andrew.
Absolutely. It is a huge help as far as logistics of testing, because, talking about real-time data, it connects directly with our SIS. It connects directly with our accommodation system here where our IEPs are housed. So when they're creating those rosters, they're being able to import them by teacher, by homeroom, by testing group, and those accommodations are already there. They're not going to the filing cabinet, opening up student cumulative files to look up IEPs, to do all of this stuff. So it cuts out a lot of the work of the upfront part of testing, which is the logistics, getting out schedules that, the master schedule reports, letting teachers know, when, where kids are going to be, room accommodation reports, giving those details in detail, reports on individual student accommodations. Like, these are things that are just a download away for them to utilize for testing that they were having to create in Excel on their own. So like I said, it's invaluable. I mean, it's worth every penny, in my opinion.
And I agree with you, Krista. I mean, we use it, and I want to say abuse it, because we use it so often. So one of the things I'm meeting with my campus testing coordinators this week, and one of the things that we're doing is we're mass uploading everybody's accommodations at this point into our testing vendor, which is also Cambium, which is another thing that we share. And so they like to say that they're in maintenance mode. So they can go in and sit in an ARD meeting now, and because everything's been uploaded, and we wouldn't be able to do that without the Testhound reports. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, I thank Testhound for following what Cambium's uploads look like, for saying this is what this looks like, and for being aware of what the state requirements for simple things like seating charts and those types of things that our testing coordinators can pull off and run and have them available. So I really appreciate Testhound for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's lovely to hear all that positive feedback. And one thing that we do always encourage and want to hear from you all is feedback. We are educators that are all working for you on your behalf. All of us have experience in assessment in some form or fashion. And the more feedback we get, the faster we can adapt the product to make it even better for you all. And that's always our goal forever. So really, I'm trying to think. That was awesome. Very informative. I can't think of any other questions unless y'all kind of bounce some other thought. If you have any finishing thoughts or anything that you heard each other say that you're like, oh, well, I thought about that too. I don't know if y'all have any last little comments about this at all. I'll open it for a few more things if you have anything.
The one thing that I would say is, as painful as this transition has been in Florida to this progress monitoring model, it is good that it is giving us an opportunity to use Testhound more than we have in the past. And it's given us that opportunity. Thank goodness for the copy to feature,
Yeah, I've thought about that throughout the whole thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, all they have to do is just copy to the next administration. And then really it's already set and done for them too, instead of having to recreate the, well, it's funny you bring that up because that comes to my mind all the time when I'm talking to districts in Florida. I'm like, well, just copy it on over and you're done. So
you should have seen my school assessment coordinator's face. They're like, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. I'm like, copy to, and they just looked at me and they're like, you're kidding me. Like, nope. Done.
Awesome. That makes me my heart really happy too. Andrew, I don't know, any parting thoughts from you on the topic?
Well, so I will say that my mind's kind of raced around some analogies and things like that, and I kept going back to this one about driving in a car with you not knowing the directions and haven't looked at where you're going. I take this example with my wife because I'm always getting in the car and I'm just driving, right? And I don't know exactly where I'm going all the time. I figure I can get there, but I don't exactly know. But I think about progress monitoring and I think about what our kids think. And I think their kids feel as though they're in that driver's seat, like they're driving, but they don't know where we're going. And so when I was a campus administrator, I was over social studies, which 8th grade social studies, we can have another conversation about that later. But one of the things that I always tried to encourage my teachers to do was to line out the path that the students are going to go before they get there. And if we talk about progress monitoring, we share that path with them. I think it's a lot easier for them to adapt, and they're not behind that driver's seat just worrying about getting there, but they can see the connections and things like that. So that's one of the things that I try to instill in my teachers is pave the path for them at the very beginning. And then they'll see the connections as they get to those milestones or those checkpoints, and they'll be able to connect the dots.
Gosh, y'all are awesome. This is amazing, and I can't wait to share this out with other educators. And just thank you both for all you do. I know I don't care what role education you have, if you're on a campus or if you're in a district office, no matter how many hats you wear, you don't get enough thank yous because everybody just has to keep the machine going every single day. So thank you both for all you do on behalf of your kids and teachers and district. And thank you for the time you spent with us today discussing this. It really was valuable, and we appreciate it very much. And just to kind of show, this is something that's cool. And y'all might not, the two of you might not know this yet. We are growing in products that we have at Education Advanced, and they all revolve around operational efficiencies at the district and campus level. And these are things that are challenging for everyone, whether it be dealing with curriculum or master scheduling. I'm a former high school guidance counselor, so this one's near and dear to my heart because that was very challenging for me. We have a product, Cardonics, to help with that. Obviously, Testhound that y'all are familiar with, and then a couple of new ones that we're excited about. Again, Counselor Heart, Pathways, graduation tracking, and how challenging that is, and then even a educator evaluation tool. So new things that we're just trying to help people with and making their lives easier. And really just thank you again for your time. Thank you for joining us. I can't wait to share this out. Be ready to be blasted on every social media channel known to man. You're going to be viral and famous before you know it. Whether you want it or not. But y'all are amazing. Thank you again for taking time to do this. And if there's ever anything that we can do for you, that's of course what we want to do. So don't ever hesitate to reach out, and y'all have a great day. You've almost made it to Wednesday, right? It's halfway through Tuesday. Tuesday's basically over. Maybe. Yeah, something like that. But hey, y'all, thank you again so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Krista, I'll see you in the spring, face to face, probably at
Yes.
and Andrew, see you here in a few weeks in Round Rock for the assessment conference. So
Absolutely, look forward to it.
Okay, y'all are the best.
Y'all were
Thank you
amazing.
for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.